This is just an outline to the presentation. I want to start with the CRPD and what kind of changes it mandates towards the inclusion of women with disabilities. I then want to discuss some of the provisions which talk about this quote-unquote twin track approach to gender and disability, and conclude with some of the things that we will need to press for as a sector. We will use the CRPD as our reference point since the law is based on the CRPD. Now, while all rights obviously apply to all genders of all persons with disabilities, there are some which have specific reference to women with disability. This slide presents some of the articles. Now, Article 6 is concerned with women with disabilities and the state obligation to address the intersection of gender and disability that works to discriminate them. Women with disabilities have more threat to their exercise of legal capacity under Article 12. Women in general face immense barriers to accessing justice, which disability makes even more difficult. Accessibility of infrastructure and personal mobility devices must consider the unique needs of women with disability. Article 28 mandates an adequate standard of living and social protection for all, including women with disabilities. Women with disabilities are at risk for violence, exploitation, and torture, and need redressal. The sexual and reproductive rights of women with disabilities are severely restricted, with women with disabilities considered to be asexual. All of these rights together help realize Article 19, which is the core of the Convention, the right to live independently and within the community. Section 4 of the 2016 law, which is related to Article 6, states that the appropriate government and the local authority shall take measures to ensure that women and children with disabilities enjoy their rights equally with others. We'll see exactly how that happens later on in the law. The realization of Article 19 and the right to live independently and be included in the community is through Section 5 of the Act. It lays down the right of persons with disabilities to live in the community and prohibits them from being forced into any living arrangement and, very important, speaks of a range of support services, in-house, residential, and community-based, which include personal assistance, and that age and gender should be considered in the design of these schemes. On Article 13, I will not say much because a lot of the work has already been done as a consequence of the sector's activism around the Justice Verma recommendations. But regarding protection from violence, exploitation, and abuse, the law has two approaches, preventive and penal, in Section 7 and 92. Any person or registered organization can file an application to the executive magistrate under Section 7. The executive magistrate is an add-on power given to authorities like the collector, joint collector, district revenue officer, revenue divisional officer, and tehsildar. They are appointed under Section 20 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Now, Section 7 kicks in when there is an act of abuse, violence, or exploitation that has been, or is being, or is likely to be committed against any person with disability. This provision will be especially helpful for women with disabilities in such vulnerable situations, and it would be good if activists could share their experiences using this provision as the years go by. The options to the executive magistrate are to rescue the woman with disability, authorizing either the police or a registered organization to provide shelter. The executive magistrate can also order that the woman with disability is kept in protective custody if they apprehend danger to their lives. They can also order maintenance to be paid to the person with disability. Under Section 92, there are criminal offenses which are especially relevant for women with disabilities and their vulnerabilities. An interesting formulation is that a person who is in position to dominate the will of a child or woman with disability and uses that position to exploit her sexually commits a separate criminal offense, which appears to negate the issue of consent, which you will find under rape law, for example. Outraging the modesty of a woman with disability is also specifically criminalized. The termination of a pregnancy without the consent of a woman with disability is also criminalized. However, in case the woman has a severe disability, the opinion of a registered medical practitioner and the consent of her guardian will be enough. This threatens to overturn the precedent set in Suchita Srivastava, which upheld the right of a woman with an intellectual disability to carry her pregnancy through. Minimum imprisonment for the offences under this Act is 6 months, can extend to 5 years, plus fine. Section 24 gives effect to Article 28 on adequate standard of living and social protection for persons with disabilities. Under Section 24, the government must frame schemes and programs towards the standard of living for persons with disabilities, with due consideration to the diversity of disability, gender, age, and socioeconomic status. The quantum of assistance to persons with disabilities under these schemes and programs shall be at least 25% higher than similar schemes applicable to others. If we look at schemes which are meant for women and children, therefore, there will be a proportionate increase for women with disabilities. The areas in which schemes are to be framed under Section 24 are varied, but those relevant to women include: one is community centers with good living conditions in terms of safety, sanitation, healthcare, and counseling. Secondly, support to women with disability for livelihood and for upbringing of their children is also an area on which schemes are required to be made. There are also separate social protection scheme guidelines for women with benchmark disabilities, that is, having more than 40% of one of the scheduled impairments under the law. There will be 5% reservation in all schemes under this section, for persons with benchmark disabilities. But women with benchmark disability will get priority in allotment of agricultural land and housing, and in all relevant schemes and development programs, and in poverty alleviation and various developmental schemes. Article 25 on health makes specific reference to persons with disabilities to be given the same range, quality, and standard of free or affordable health care and programs as provided to other persons, including in the area of sexual and reproductive health. Section 25 speaks of framing schemes to promote health care and includes sexual and reproductive health care, especially for women with disability, who are otherwise excluded from this area. To conclude, I want to highlight where I think sector focus areas should be. Firstly, data. Schemes relating to women need to maintain disaggregated data on impairments of women accessing them. Schemes relating to persons with disabilities must maintain data disaggregated on gender and other areas. We must press for inclusion of disability in the National Crime Records Bureau data. The government must prioritize the inclusion of women with disability. My colleague Meenakshi at Equals is currently doing a study on the basis of available census data and women with disabilities, and the findings include the staggering facts that almost 40% of girls in the age group 5 to 9 are out of school, and the non-worker population among women with disability is a staggering 77%. Thirdly, the tool given to us in Section 48 of social audit of existing schemes is so important. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, 28 out of the 60 schemes available for persons with disabilities were enacted even before the 1995 Persons with Disabilities Act, let alone the CRPD. Many of these schemes are actually regressive in their framing. I will use as an example the marriage allowance scheme. This is a scheme which is being popularized in many states. Persons with disabilities are given Rs 25,000 on marriage in order to encourage normal persons to marry them. These schemes are framed in old, outdated charity models, and it's time that women with disability move beyond this. I would love to discuss the area with those interested and also work on making this presentation into a resource on women with disability. So those of you who have questions and comments are encouraged to contact me. On Twitter, I'm available at =CPSJ, and on email, I am amba@cpsj.org. Thank